So how many of you learned something new there on that video? Yeah, a few hands going up. So the point I'm trying to make over here is that where the internet's taken us so far is basically some of the statistics which you've seen just there. Where it's going to be taking you in years to come, you know, I've got some more content on that a little bit later on. But with some of these roles that you're seeing up over here, the internet touches us in many different ways. Primarily two different ways. We want to access the internet to look at things such as the news, such as Facebook, watching TV shows online, or we look at email and things like that. Okay? So there's two primary channels which we always deal with on the internet. What I want to do for you guys tonight is try and look at them in such a way that it's not so much, I can't do this and I can't do that, I'm not sure if that's safe, but give you a sense that once you leave here tonight that there's a lot more of the internet that is available to you and is safe for you to use and get more out of the internet to enjoy. Okay. So my name's Daniel. As Tom introduced me a little bit earlier, I graduated from here back in 2004, and in the meantime I've been working as a security engineer for various organisations, Cisco Systems, Websense more recently. And during that time it's really become apparent to me that what the industry does, and at big conferences like OzCert, which is held once a year, is that the industry says, well, you know, yes, security is very important for the internet, but how do we tell people about it? Okay, and that's, I think, where the big disconnect is. Where, for instance, hands up here, who has antivirus installed on their computers? Look at antivirus, okay. How many of you here have a firewall? Okay. How many of you here don't know you have a firewall even though you think, yeah. Here we go. And this is the part over here where the tools are there, they're provided. Microsoft builds them into Windows 7 these days better than they used to. Good on them. Apple and Mac OS X still appear to be quite safe places to work and to do business. But beyond that, you look at the other controls there are, all the antivirus companies coming at you saying, buy this, Office Works and things like that. And you say, well, really, how is it going to protect me? Is it the be-all and end-all? And this is the thing that we're facing. You look at the left-hand side over there, and you'll see lots of familiar names, yes? Who here uses Facebook? Yeah, excellent. I'm on it every 5 seconds myself. Anybody who knows me will see me busily hitting refresh on it every time because somebody sent me something. And the same over there with LinkedIn and Yahoo, Amazon, eBay. They're things that we access quite frequently. Here's the thing though, a lot of the content, a lot of the pictures, a lot of the text, a lot of everything that you see on Facebook, on eBay, on LinkedIn is a nice front page for you. But in reality, it's just people posting a bunch of links, a bunch of other stuff that doesn't live at Facebook's servers, data centers. It doesn't live at LinkedIn. It doesn't live on Amazon. It all happens to be things we link to from Sydney Morning Herald or from other news sites, things that we find on random blogs all over the place. Okay? So this is now where we have to start looking at where do we view our boundaries of trust on the internet. Somewhere we're going to say, yes, I trust everything that's on the left-hand side over there, right? These are good, reputable websites that I'm pretty safe on, I think. Okay? But then beyond that is actually where all the content itself actually lives. And this is the part where, what I mentioned earlier with antivirus and with firewalls, this is where it has difficulty trying to keep a hold of it. Now, why would that be? That would be the case where, who have you had a firewall again? Okay, yeah, right. Most people just don't say, right, I'll put my hand up because he said so. How about, who here has ever had the pleasure of configuring a firewall? Yeah, there we go. You've had the, really? Nice. I'm impressed. So one of the things though is where does your firewall come from? Usually you're going to find that people like Telstra, IINet, or whoever you've got your internet with give you a box. They'll call it a broadband gateway, they'll call it a router, they'll call it all sorts of things. It also happens to be a firewall inside. Nice. They made a movie about firewalls. It sounds like I'm protected. The thing is, though, is that firewalls ultimately don't know necessarily what the next thing is that's coming around. Okay? So, what is the most outstanding figure on this page?
No. I was going with 118,000.
118,000. I took this on the Monday, I screenshotted this the Monday after the royal wedding. The royal wedding here in Australia was a Friday. And then 48 hours later, come the first thing Monday morning, that's how many people had decided, I like the look of that. Like, it's the easiest thing they'll ever do. Things like Facebook, things like LinkedIn, things like Twitter make things that easy. It's the convenience that says, I'm going to go ahead, like, I'm going to tweet this, post. It's so easy to do, without necessarily thinking it through and then saying, well, what really could be the risks through there? Through any of these over here, we've got links here. There's another link up there. There's another link up there. Those links could point you towards potentially nasty sites. You've got a number of pictures up over here, each one of which could be a picture with a virus or some sort of other nasty software embedded within those pictures. But we don't necessarily give it that second thought. And we cannot rely upon our antiviruses and our firewalls to make that decision for you when this happens after only 48 hours, or in this instance, after only 20 minutes. I love this. As soon as I came back from, I was watching the address of President Obama saying, yes, we've got Osama bin Laden and this is what happened and stuff. That was a 20-minute speech. I came back to my desk and this was already in my inbox. You've got to love the internet sometimes, don't you? You really do, because that's the good stuff about the internet. It's the real inventiveness. It's innovation to be had. There's ideas to spread around. But by the same token, you've also got to be aware of who do I trust? Where does this content come from? Who sent it to me? So on and so forth. Here's an example of a company that we all thought we could trust, whose name is Sony. Sony, we've all heard a little bit earlier this year, got done big time. We've heard how many thousands, millions of people had their credit card information potentially compromised by their lack of security in such a way. As it turns out, not everybody was safe. Their credit cards were safe after all. This, however, is 3 years ago. This is 2008. So it's not like they haven't been through security scares before. What happened over here was the PlayStation.com site in the US had one of their banner ads, you know those advertisements you see along the top or along the right-hand side of web pages? One of those, Sony wasn't aware that somebody had broken into their website and replaced an advertisement with a picture of their own choosing. As soon as that picture loaded up, you, the users, or anybody else that went to PlayStation.com didn't have to click anything. As soon as the picture loaded up, it actually it loaded up a picture from Russia, right, which actually had a virus, or a Trojan, if you like, behind it. And that loaded in the background. You didn't know that while the rest of PlayStation.com is on your browser, and you're looking at games or you're looking at what the latest news is regarding to PlayStation, that behind there was actually this this malware, this virus coming back. And you sit there thinking, I thought I could trust Sony. Right? So again, what's the issue over here? The issue is that with any antivirus, does anybody have an idea as for how long it might take for a new virus, antivirus signature to be released?
24 hours?
24 hours.
No, actually, no, let's go a week.
Yeah, a week? Yeah, keep going.
2 weeks?
Maybe. So here's the thing. I'll give you an example. When I was teaching at TAFE a few years ago, I came in for my Tuesday night class, and they said, and I had a USB key, which with exams I wanted to print off for my students. And the TAFE said, well, I'm sorry, you cannot use your USB key to print it off. We've had a virus infection on the weekend, and our antivirus signatures have not come through from the vendor. I know who the vendor is, I'm not going to say who it is. And they said, come back for your Thursday night class. I've come back on Thursday night, and the same thing happened. They said, I'm sorry, you're going to have to delay your exam to the following week. We're still waiting for the antivirus signature to come through. And this is unfortunately what we're paying for. Every time you go into your Officeworks, every time you go into Harvey Norman or wherever you buy your favourite antivirus, and they say, subscribe for another year, give us another 12 months, you need it. Have a think about how much it can protect you at that very second when a new virus, a new piece of malware is written and then released on the internet. It does take a few days, a week, 2 weeks sometimes for that protection to kick in. And in the meantime, it is down to you and your own capabilities to start looking at it and then saying, well, how can I actually protect myself? The same ultimately happens with firewalls, like I was saying as well. Whether you go to the shops and you buy your own piece of software that you have to install on your own computer, or if you look at the box that Telstra or Optus or Ionet gave you and said, that looks good, that looks very official with lots of blinky lights on it and I trust what it's doing. It doesn't necessarily, what firewalls are very good at is kind of taking the lighthouse approach of I can see across the high seas there are no pirates coming my way. Excellent. It doesn't look behind necessarily. Firewalls have never been very strong at this whole bi-directional thing of what if somebody takes a USB key, right, one of these things up here, and then plugs it in a laptop which is sitting behind the firewall in your home, at your office, or things like that. Then what happens? What if somebody clicks on a PowerPoint file, an Excel file that resides now on the USB, it's now on your laptop behind the firewall? The firewall is just looking in one direction. Anything can happen behind it, and historically speaking, it doesn't matter whatsoever. So if you're looking at and saying, well, I've already got a firewall, I've already got antivirus, this is kind of where I'm aiming this presentation. For you who are not necessarily technical enough to look at your firewall and saying, I'm going to reconfigure that. Take a moment to let this sink in a little bit. Is anybody familiar with this particular website, by the way? Nobody is familiar with this website. Okay, for the technical ones amongst you, these particular guys maintain the master list worldwide of all illegal paths on the internet in a way that the computers basically do. Because where you and I type in facebook.com or yahoo.com, on the internet, they're all talking numbers instead. So this is a list, a master list of all the illegal, paths, if you like, on the internet. It's somebody's job. There's lots of big businesses out there that pay security consultants to help update their security systems with however often this updates, which is generally once a month or once every 2 months. So for your own firewalls at home, who's updating? This is where we start getting into issues. Okay, so having or understanding some of this is not where end users are meant to be. You guys were never really meant to have to know stuff like this, and yet the manufacturers of your Norton 360, your Trend Micro, your Kaspersky, so on and so forth, actually have this in the back, and then nobody's changing it. Okay, so that's where firewalls fall down, and that's where, when for the things I'm talking about in the future, like how to keep your computers virus-free, what steps can you take to not open the wrong attachments on email, and how can you stay safe from internet fraud? They're the kind of things that your own gut feeling is ultimately going to trump your antivirus and your firewalls. One of the things I like to say with antiviruses and firewalls, and I'm not going to harp about this for too much longer, is it reminds me of one of my favourite movies. One of my favourite movies is Dr. Strangelove. Does anybody know that movie by any chance? Oh, lots of people. It's the only comedy ever written by Stanley Kubrick, released in 1963. And it had the tagline, Dr. Strangelove. Does anybody know the tagline for it? How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. Thank you, Chris. Okay, and the idea was, if nobody's actually seen the movie, the idea was, it's about America and Russia, and they've both got nuclear bombs, and they say, right, everything's going to be fine because nobody's going to launch the nuclear bombs. Mutually assured destruction, you've got to be crazy. And they don't. The scenario does not consider the one crazy general. It's like, what happens if? There is no if in nuclear mutually assured destruction. If one fires, the other fires, and everybody blows up. Nobody wants to think about that. And this is the unfortunate part about security as it's currently being sold by a lot of companies out there to yourselves, is that this holy trinity, if you like, of firewall, antivirus, anti-spyware does not cover you even for some of the basic scenarios over here. A basic scenario is an email that lands in your inbox that says greetings, or open this card, or happy anniversary. I like the happy anniversary ones because I'm like, I'm not married. Thank you anyway. And so this email lands in your inbox, and if you were to click it, back in the time when Yahoo Greetings used to be quite popular, this looks, for all intents and purposes, like Yahoo Greetings. The issue here is that it's not a firewall's job to correlate between what appears on the screen of your web browser and the address at the top. Okay, remember that firewalls don't necessarily talk in terms of yahoo.com or facebook.com, they talk in terms of their numbers, IP addresses. Similarly, it's not going to be an antivirus's job to try and stop a keylogger being installed at the back, much like with Sony PlayStation that I said earlier, if it doesn't have the right signatures for it. You know, if the signature has not been written yet. See what I'm saying?
The virus protection signature. So, is that what you mean?
Absolutely. You're effectively looking at a firewall, an antivirus, who's got like one arm on its back and the other, blind like this, and saying, I can see everything clearly, it's safe, honestly. And that's what, unfortunately, you're going to be so far relying on the technology. So what can we do about it? The first step to what you guys can do about this is taking a look at risk. The funky thing with risk is that we as people parse risk or look at risk very differently, right? Some of you might do lots of skydiving, for example, right? And I look at skydivers and I'm just like, you've got to be joking. I'm not going to jump out of a plane with just a parachute. And then on weekends, I'm going to fly aerobatics. And next week, I'm going to the state championships, right? That's the kind of thing I do. I look at risk very differently to other people. And we all have our own ways in which we look at risk. And the important part there is that how we look at risk ultimately then says, how do we look at trust? And so far, the way in which we've been saying is, I want to look at what's good and what's bad. And whatever's bad over here, block that off forever and ever, amen, please. So, we have been so far busy with firewalls and antiviruses. How many antivirus signatures are there generally on your antivirus that you install? Any guesses? Anybody at all?
20,000.
20. I'm going to take that down a little bit, but thanks for the high offer. Generally,
1,000.
Sorry?
1,000.
1,000 higher. Do I have more than 1,000? Can anybody raise 1,000? You're looking at about 6,500 to 7,000 signatures. Amongst any of this, and this is loaded on your laptop at any point in time at the end over there. So that's why, if any of you have installed antivirus and then saying, why is my computer suddenly slow? Now you know why. It's because every time you open a file, every time you do anything, it's going through its little Rolodex of 7,000 signatures saying, haven't got a match, haven't got a match, haven't got a match. That's nice, that's fair enough. So antivirus still has its place. But next to how do we then cater for the stuff we don't know is ultimately in your hands. Okay. And where the stuff is going, where you should be aware of where trouble is occurring on the internet is generally the new stuff. Anywhere there's buzz, anywhere where people are searching for news, for updates, information, anything, as it happens, that's generally where you'll find trouble at the same time, unfortunately. Good example is earlier this year in the disasters over in Japan, where Google, number 4, the results over here, was a fake result. Okay, it's not a fake as in you click on it, nothing absolutely happens. It's a fake result, and then somebody's gone and registered a domain name very freshly. We took this, this comes out of the Websense security research labs, and they took this snapshot 24 hours after the earthquake and subsequent nuclear disaster happened in Japan. So somebody had gone and registered a domain name with the word tsunami words. That's generally not a good sign in the first place. You look at that and you say, okay, that's a red flag. I'm not going to start looking at that. If you want news, there's trusted news sites like AAP, SMH, BBC, CNN. There's all sorts of websites for news and information you could go. But if Google, by any stretch of the imagination with their algorithm for how they determine results, this one comes in at number 4. One of the other things that they play on is this sense, I don't know if you share this as well, but I've found that in my work that I've done, people like PDF results. People like PDFs and say, yes, they're different. It's not just a standard web page. Somebody has to pay for Adobe Acrobat and format this thing and put it on the internet. So that is fake as well. Generally, PDF is as susceptible to your Word, PowerPoints, Excel to viruses and nastiness built into the document of work. So PDF is no safer than other file types. I hate to break it to you. So they've gone for the double whammy over here, where they've put in the keyword in the domain name that you're searching for, and they've gone for a PDF result. And that generally, you click on that, you're looking for trouble, and you're looking for something that's nasty to be downloaded to your computer. Does that kind of make sense where I'm going? Okay. So you generally find that, end of year, every year, big countries in the States and Europe over here, end of year for tax. People are searching for tax agent or tax tips or how to minimise tax. Google suddenly gets a rise in the keyword tax in their searches. And that's when, online criminals are aware, this is when I can capture people. Okay, so again, take a look at only the trusted sites that you know for whatever you're looking at. Okay. So what do you think would be a buzzword right about now? What's happening right about now that you think people would be searching for? Sorry?
Occupy Wall Street.
Occupy Wall Street's a very good one. Posted something funny about that on my Facebook the other day. Anything else? The rugby? Really?
I can't stand it, but I'm sure people will look it up.
Maybe New Zealand, but over here we stop caring. Anybody else? Melbourne Cup's coming up? Absolutely. Something bigger. Something that was this big outpouring of, oh my gosh, what's going on? Steve Jobs of Apple. Steve Jobs is a very... Queen's here. You see the crowds for the Queen? There's not many people who actually want to see the Queen anymore. More people came for Oprah. The thing is, though, with Steve Jobs is that now online criminals are trying to take advantage of the hype, all of the buzz around it, and then trying to lure people in of, come on, you want this kind of stuff. So on Facebook recently, you may well have seen these links on Facebook of, in memory of Steve, a company, not just any company, a company, is giving out 50 iPads tonight. Rest in peace, Steve. Okay, so things like that. Generally, you're looking out for anything that's being handed out for free, as well as something that's tying it into something recent there as well. Nothing is ever handed out for free. That's the thing. The thing is, though, is that this spread like wildfire on Facebook. And here's how it works. Once you click on that link, 2 things happen. The first thing is you appear to a page up over here, which then explains a little bit more. It's generally pretty sparse, and all it says is, it puts a low number there, and it's got this random number, which is ticking down as time goes by, saying, hurry, click like, or else you're going to miss out on your free iPad. Okay? So there's all these little mechanisms there to try and lure you in to click like on this. You'll then find this appears on your Facebook feed. So if you've ever seen something like that on your Facebook feed, you're scratching your head going, I didn't put that there. Okay, then you might want to look through, your browser history, or start deleting your browser history, or other mechanisms you can take, because again, firewall, or antivirus, or other security mechanisms will not catch this kind of thing. Then the third stage happens. Then once you've clicked like on one of these things, then it will say, oh, you've run out. We've run out. You can't get your free iPad, I'm sorry. However, would you like to consider one of these other offers we have over here? The point is that whoever's running this scam web page is receiving money from these advertisers over here. Anytime anybody happens to just view this page, you don't have to click anything. So long as these advertisements appear on your page, someone else is getting money. And meanwhile, you've been made to look a fool on your Facebook. Now, this is all quite tame in comparison. If I compare this again to the Sony PlayStation example I had earlier, one of these 4 pictures purporting to be advertisements may have some sort of malware embedded into that picture and being downloaded to your computer as you speak. It could be a keylogger, something to record your passwords, which is then sending it back to a master control somewhere else. So these are the kind of risks I ask you to start thinking about when you're dealing on your Facebook or when you're looking at your emails and things like that. This is another one which I saw on many of my friends' walls, actually, which this particular one actually elicited quite a big response this particular one was a $250 voucher for Outback Steakhouse, which is much more popular in the States than it is here, because we know what's in the Outback over here. Go to the Outback, get a kangaroo, and call it home. There's no kangaroo on the menu for Outback Steakhouse. I've been in both countries. It's not. I'll never forget walking into an Outback Steakhouse in New York and saying, so where's the kangaroo on the menu? And they just looked dumbfounded. It's like, we can't hurt kangaroos. This is 3 separate links for the same thing, right? These are all different links over here. And yet, I was a search I did, was it last night or this morning on Facebook, when I searched Outback Steakhouse on Facebook this morning. All of these different links come up. There's no correlation whatsoever. To the point where there was an official rebuttal against it. Outback Steakhouse Australia was good enough to post on their own Facebook page saying, if you try walking into any of our restaurants with a $250 voucher, I'm sorry, we're just going to disappoint you. And you've been made, not only one, to look foolish, but 2, more importantly, your own security may have been compromised by clicking on this link. Okay? So these are the kind of things over here where, again, it's up to you and it's up to your own behaviour. All it takes is clicking like, and then all of a sudden you get transferred to these other pages. So that's one of the points I'm trying to get across. So there are many other examples of this around the place. I had a good giggle at the one that they get 2 free airline tickets. I'm like, wow, that's generous. The ones that seem to have gone away, though, is this one over here. You may have seen this on your Facebook walls before, of, oh, check out this girl who forgets to turn her camera off, or check as her father walks in and stuff like that. Has anybody seen that on their Facebook walls? Your partner is like Facebook. So the thing is that again, the funny thing was that actually appeared on one of my own friends' wall there as well, which is why I blanked out all these names and things like that. Is because you've got that many friends on Facebook, several hundred, and some of my friends have thousands of friends on Facebook, and it just takes one click for it to spread to another few hundred and another few hundred. Because you've got to be aware and start looking at, okay, where do these links actually take me? So does anybody know why you've got things like bit.ly and really short links these days?
What has something to do with Twitter?
Twitter is one. So you're halfway there. Sorry?
So the people we publish know how many people.
That's another one. I wasn't thinking about that one, but you're on the ball. The third one I'm thinking of is mobile phones. Right, with mobile browsers. You give them a nice, so it's easy to repost in your own Facebook or repost on your Twitter using your mobile phone, your iPhone, your Android phone. It's easier to have a small little link like that rather than go to this enormous URL like SMH likes to use. Okay? So the thing is that that actually masks the real destination over there. And for the most part, on a trust scale, probably better to avoid. unless you're absolutely certain that that friend has actually written something else about it or things like that, it's better to avoid it. It's safer to avoid. Okay, so everything I'm mentioning here, I don't deny it's going to take you that little bit more time, or you might miss out from time to time on things that your friends genuinely want to share with you. But it's the unfortunate way in that to be safe, better be safe than sorry, rather than clicking on something and then getting a virus or worse than that. The worse than that.
Do you mind if we ask you a few questions?
Just a couple of questions.
1 in 3 Australians can't be wrong.
She must be a MySpace user.
First of all, what's your name, address, and phone number?
That has to be personal.
I don't know whether I want to give all that, to be honest with you.
Don't worry, we're just going to show it to about 600 million people.
Yeah.
Well, I'll probably pass, thanks.
My email address is that@live.com.
Great. Can you just confirm that?
Yeah, confirm your email address, please. Yeah, that again.
I just want to know what your interests are, where you went to school, your sexual orientation, gender. What are you doing right now?
I'm drinking Coke.
Angus is currently drinking a Coke. Can you guys give us a list of every friend you've ever had?
In alphabetical order, please.
Alphabetical order would be great.
So, starting with A, obviously. Generally, Aaron's, they generally come first.
Yeah. Should I put pornography under your interest then? Well, I think I should.
Yeah,
pornography.
definitely. Tag that.
Pornography. Do you guys have any photos of yourselves in your underpants, semi-naked, duck face?
No, would you be willing to take some?
No.
Would you mind getting really shit-faced to make a total ass of yourself so we can show all of your friends and co-workers?
Everyone say, never gonna get promoted.
We're just going to ask you about your sexual orientation, gender, your interests.
Are you a male or a female?
What are you doing right now?
Fuck off.
Welcome to the offline social network.
Enjoy that.
Enjoy that.
Update it regularly.
I'm leaving.
Could you give us a reason why you're leaving, please?
Sorry.
Are you not finding this useful?
Is it a privacy concern? Other? Before you go, can you please read out what it says on this sign? Great show. Do you like that? Does anybody see any parallels between their own online usage and things like that? Am I the only one? I do share a lot on my Facebook, lots of photos, lots of videos, lots of status like that. But by the same token, I also have to be aware of who's seeing it for various reasons. And one of the things which I'm also going to highlight over here, which definitely is not highlighted very well, is the differences between home usage and then office usage. Okay? Who has email address and internet access at the office where they work? 1, 2, 3 people. Oh, here we go. Peer pressure. Okay, so the hands start going up. One of the things that, there's a couple of things which I've been noticing in organisations. A lot of organisations I've been speaking to are still very happy with their traditional antivirus firewall technologies. And that's saying the rest is up to the person at their desk, which is a bit disturbing. There's more on that that's going to be later. One of the things which I'm going to highlight, though, is over here about what is being shared on Facebook, is the outbound sites. A lot of companies over there, like I had Jetstar appear as one of the little things on the right of my Facebook. It said, click like if you'd like to win one of 5 $500 vouchers. And I thought about it a second. I said, it's something for nothing. It's free. This can't be right. It's Jetstar, though. So instead of clicking like, I clicked on the actual page for Jetstar first. And sure enough, they were saying, hey, we're running this promotion right now. You can win some vouchers. Back to the ad and click like. And then cringed and then realised I've just liked Jetstar. Right? So outwards, Jetstar is saying, I'm getting with this whole social media thing, this is looking really cool. And then what are they doing inside the organisation? Okay, so inside the organisation is something very different than what they're doing outside. So I'm just going to leave that here for a second. Okay? So one of the dilemmas that they're having inside is obviously how are their users at their desks actually treating Facebook? What things are they typing? What things are they clicking like on? How is security potentially being compromised internally? So if any of you are finding that you cannot get to Facebook, you cannot get to eBay from your office, you need to get an idea of there's some paranoia that's going on over there, and rightly so. But by the same token, they are missing out by trying to enforce 2 different policies. Inside, they're saying, forget it, you're not accessing. And then on the outside, they're saying, oh yeah, this stuff's cool. Okay. So knocking onto all of this, though, is something called an acceptable user policy, or an end user agreement. There's all sorts of different names for it. Basically, it means that when you sign up, when you actually start a contract or start gainful employment, somewhere in the clauses will be their IT policy. And somewhere is there going to be a clause saying, thou shalt not misuse the internet at this office. Thou shalt not abuse of the laptop that we are going to provide you, potentially the phone as well. And the thing is, they're always very much overlooked, like fine print of just about anything there. But everything that's done on social networking, on your own personal things there as well, has that knock-on effect there as well at the workplace. That can sometimes lead to very nasty, I won't say altercations, shall I say discussions with human resources and so on and so forth. And the thing is that human resources departments and the companies I've spoken to are only just beginning to grasp how social networking can actually be a benefit and not just all the bad press. But it's something I'm going to keep talking about a little bit later on. Okay. One of the other things, I'm just going to cover some other things that will be useful for both the home and the office there as well. And most of the time I bring this up, people are like, I wasn't expecting that. The thing is that security on the internet ultimately starts, I'll try that again, ultimately starts, with the correct pronunciation, with physical security, okay, how it's locked down. And this is more and more difficult with releases of tablets, the iPad, Motorola Zoom, HP Slate, and so on and so forth. There's no little place to necessarily lock it down because it's supposed to fit in pretty much anywhere on your person. Okay? So locking, if you still have a laptop, by all means, try and take a look at how that can be done. Okay? Because especially if it's an office asset, it's a work asset as well, because they are relying upon you to lock it down. Similarly, an interesting part over here, which I believe the state and federal governments here in Australia have had rather much difficulty with, is that losing some of their information, CDs and laptops lying around at airports in the last few years, for example. Okay? That's happening at an increasing rate. So one thing that some companies I'm aware of are turning to is encrypting the entire contents of the laptop. One of the things that really intrigued the Australian Department of Defence in January this year when Apple presented to them and said, hey, you can take the iPad to Afghanistan, to Iraq, to East Timor, to other hotspots and theatres of conflict. And because it's got very little local storage on it, you can barely store anything on it of any value, right? It really relies upon the user emailing or sending or Dropboxing their files somewhere else. The Department of Defence thought, well, that's a good idea, because if I lose that, or if a soldier or anybody else loses that overseas, then whoever picks it up won't be able to sign in to the place where we drop the files, and there's nothing of value on the device. I like it. So they're still considering that right now for that particular reason. But since all the other devices that you and I use have high amounts of hard disk storage in them, you might want to consider what encryption can do for you to save your stuff. You hear about people in the news saying, I use GPS to save my iPhone. It's nice. But really, it's the information therein that could be used to be stolen. Stealing information and trying to assume your identity is really where the big money is now for scammers and other criminals there as well. So you might want to consider where encryption can take you from there. I'm not going to say too much about that. Passwords. What to say about this, really? One of the things around passwords is it's easy to regard as a bit of a gripe, a bit of a nuisance to have to change them. Does anybody have to change them more than once every 6 months? Once every 3 months? Cool. Okay, so pretty. Whoever's setting up that passwords for you is being nice about it, I suppose. There's many different schools of thoughts about this. The school of thought that I'm going to put out there is it's good to have different passwords for email, internet banking, Facebook, so on and so forth, so that not one password rules them all, so to speak. The other is that this particular tool over here actually creates random strings for you, right? Which looks difficult at first, but these are the most difficult to crack because they're completely random, parenthesis, full stop, number, letter, capital letter, and so on and so forth. It's been a long time since online criminals started cracking dictionary words as passwords. So much so that it was one of the reasons why your computers get infected in the first place. Online criminals figure it's a good idea to infect your computer with some sort of virus and then harness the power of your computer with another 20,000 computers that they've also, what's the word I'm after? Hacked, infected, I'm thinking of better ones, but that'll do. Infected, I like it. You imagine the power of 20,000 computers at once, all aimed at your password, right? And that's ultimately now how it's being sold in black markets today. You can go to various websites and buy timeshares. So it's like a holiday house on the coast. If you like a timeshare, and you can buy that computer time of 20,000 computers or more, hundreds of thousands of computers, all aimed at people's passwords and bank pins. And because you've got all that computer power harnessed on one person's accounts, they'll be tracked, they'll be compromised if they're dictionary words, if they're easy to guess. Okay, so I do strongly recommend taking a look at this website and then getting something random out for you to make it that much more difficult. Okay. So other steps you can possibly take as well. I've talked about firewalls a little bit earlier, and of course they do have their place. Of course, what is handed out to you by default by your service provider or what you buy in the shops has its place there as well. But sometimes you've got to be aware that you probably have two. Has anybody bought a firewall or antivirus in the shop recently? Software packages? No, nobody. Okay. So most of you have two, because the other one's built into Windows. Ever since Windows XP, it's just there. It just doesn't tell you it's there. Okay. So it's difficult to know what it's doing when it doesn't tell you it's there. And then beyond that, there's also the box that your Optus, your Telstra, your IINet, your TPG, whoever gave you with your internet gateway. That's doing something there as well. And that box doesn't have any way of telling you what it's doing. You never see a pop-up on your screen saying your Telstra box, your Cisco router, your Linksys, your Netgear router has an alert. It never tells you. So you're sitting there going, is this thing working? Okay, so you have to, and you don't want to rely on that, which is why I've told you some of these other tricks, and I've got some more coming as well. Okay? So ultimately, this is the thing which I highlight the most, which is, of course, yourselves. I do ask that, that with your own capabilities, you can actually bring a better judgment of trust than any hardware or any software that you purchase. Okay.
Clearly there's work that has to be done again around the UAC prompts, in part because of user feedback, that they get the prompts at times they don't necessarily expect it and it's not intuitive. And one of the challenges is with many of these things where we try to give users control, if you give people too many prompts in too many situations, they view it as an impediment to getting their work done, and they just start clicking OK on everything. So one of the things we need to focus on is what I call the trusted user experience, or TUX. Today, we ask people to make decisions, but we give them dialogues and pop-ups and other things that don't really enable them to make the right decisions as often as we would like. And part of that is about the user experience and what we tell users. So you can be surfing the web and you'll get a warning that this site is out of another site's control, or you may be, passing data to another site. So what's a user supposed to do with that information? You can click cancel and not do what you were trying to do, or you can accept the risk. We need to figure out better ways to mitigate that risk, but let the user achieve their objectives.
That was basically Microsoft at an OSCERT conference a couple of years ago saying after Windows Vista, we stuffed up. Did anybody ever get onto using Windows Vista by any chance? People up the front going, oh my gosh. Scariest thing. That was when Microsoft started popping Windows in front of you saying, do you wish to allow this, yes or no? Okay, yes, now enter your password to allow this. Okay. And it would do that every 5 seconds. It was frustrating. You couldn't do anything without what it called UAC was Universal Access Control. That's what it was. Right? So what he's referring to is something I like to call the default yes mentality, which is basically what makes Facebook so easy. And what I said about clicking like is the easiest thing you'll ever do. The same thing applies ultimately, and what he's referring to, UAC, is one of the built-in firewall pieces of Windows Vista, which has been watered down and suitably changed for Windows 7. So Windows 7 doesn't ask you as many times as Vista used to say, would you like to perform this action, yes or no? Maybe about to blow up the world, yes or no? Right. So it was difficult just saying, but I just wanted to view like this funny video that somebody gave me. Why am I being asked these questions over and over again? And it actually made people more afraid to use their computers and access the internet because it kept asking me too many questions. Okay. So rest assured that the industry does know that things have gotten to a point. Windows Vista, everybody turned around and said, that's gone too far, it's too difficult. Apple had a good laugh and said, hey, Mac users, we leave them alone. So that's one of the good things to do as well. Right? But one of the things to be aware of is that antivirus does this as well. Firewalls do this as well. Norton 360s do this, your Kaspersky's do this, your Trend Micros, your McAfee antivirus, so on and so forth. All ask you questions every so often. And they all expect you to know the answer. And that's the difficult thing, is because all the questions they pose you are not easy questions. It's like, do you want to do this? What am I doing? You haven't told them yet. Okay. So, admittedly, that's one of the areas which I feel antivirus has fallen down. That's why you will not find antivirus tools. It's because I'm looking at user behavior as a way to say, what websites am I visiting? What attachments am I opening on emails? Who do I trust to plug in a USB on this? Rather than relying upon so many different things. Plus, my laptop now runs a good 30% faster, just by uninstalling antivirus. That's my choice. I used to use this particular one over here beforehand, Avira, which was recommended. This is an excellent website over here, which does a comparison for you of how much up-to-date security do you get versus a trade-off of performance versus cost for subscription per year, so on and so forth. I cannot highly recommend this website highly enough. Some of the things over here, you look at it and go, I've never heard of this. ESET 32. Ever since, this was one of the websites that really trumpeted that ESET 32 was an excellent antivirus. It was much lower cost, in some cases free, compared to some of the other big names over here, Symantec and F-Secure. And all of a sudden, I saw IT administrators at offices start to use this, so on and so forth, and start to gain popularity. There are free alternatives out there. I personally feel, as did the Chief Security Officer of Cisco a few years ago, John Stewart, when he came out in also 2009, well I say came out, he didn't come out, but he came out in also 2009 and said, antivirus is dead. And he actually said, I'm looking at ways, well he didn't say, he's looking at ways to stop the subscription of all antivirus across Cisco systems, which is a 70,000 strong company. But he did say, look, what's the point? It's the value add. Why are you paying money for these late antivirus updates when there's this 1 week window, 2 week windows, of nasty stuff being released on the internet versus when this gets updated? So it's something which I do highlight as just consider it. World's most awesome ringtone. So to consider that there's these other things between you though and that funny picture that you do still want to take a look at. Because ultimately your friends do want to share the good stuff with you on email, on Facebook, so on and so forth, okay? The thing is that there is that risk that you take, okay? Cute, right? Okay. One of the other things that comes up as well, and who's ever seen pop-ups in their web browser saying you must update Microsoft now? Anybody? More people? There we go, okay.
Yeah, so I use a Mac.
Sorry? You might use a Mac, but you still get the odd pop-up from time to time. Right. I'm getting to Mac users in a second, okay? So don't think I'm not done with you. One of the things that I do see a lot, and it's still very prevalent, is a lot of websites where this pop-up does come up. And it tends to be on the websites that you want to download music, but it's not iTunes and you don't have to pay for it. Pirate Bay. And it does, you get these little pop-ups from time to time that's saying, oh, we detected there's a virus on the computer. The only people who are going to detect really that something should be updated on your endpoint is the official manufacturer. If for any reason, any pop-up ever turns up on your web browser, close it. Find any way to make it disappear without clicking yes. And then go back to the original manufacturer. In this case, I'm going to go to Microsoft is update.microsoft.com, and then run a quick check to see if you need an update. One tip with Microsoft.com, this particular screenshot over here, what's a reason why this won't work? Any techies in the room that might understand why this is actually an impossible screen? No takers.
Yeah.
That's not what I was thinking.
Yes. I'm not a techie, but it says this installation is essentially your normal system, but the system is running, so I want it.
I like it.
That's not
it. Microsoft does not allow you to install any Windows Update using the Firefox browser. Windows Update forces you to use either Internet Explorer or it forces you back to the Windows Update in the Windows Control Panel. Right? It does not allow updates through Firefox. Okay, so when this screen magically appeared and a very, very close address, not genuine, but very close to genuine, appeared, and certainly very close again, the font here is incorrect, but apart from that, you're looking good. All of that stuff looks so very close to being the real deal. Except, well, that's one thing over there, where Microsoft Update, for Windows Update, Microsoft Office Update, actually forces you either Internet Explorer or this. This is the correct one out of Windows 7. That is an incorrect, very fake one as well. So the ones in red over here are examples of fake ones.
Did it take time to load, or was it quick? Because the real one takes a minute or 10.
That's a very good point there as well, where the pop-up does come pretty quickly and said, you must update now, or we detected something. Yes, question?
Dan, you made a point there which you said the address at the top is very close to Microsoft. Microsoft with some misspelling or had anything on it. I mean, part of the social engineering is even when you go in and check that it looks like a valid address. I mean, one of the things I do is look at what the web address is and say, does that really mean stgeorge.com? And St George doesn't have a stgeorge.com.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Sort of thing, .au on it. So I mean, going and checking the social engineering aspect of that part of checking, looking at whether the web address is sensible is actually quite difficult unless you have a really, really broad knowledge of how companies have set up websites, and even so, some of them have lost their real names because someone else already bid for it. So I find that that's one of the most insidious ones that you actually can't tell. And sometimes, except by saying, well, I'm not going to click anything, which of course is a fallback, because the social engineering aspect of the names are very similar. I mean, if you look at all the scamming, I mean, if one for the bank, it'll have, info@stgeorge.com.uk or something. St George won't have one in UK or something like that. So I mean, that I think is a far greater problem. It means that you think you're doing the right thing, but you're going to miss out because of the social engineering aspect.
That's a very good point of trying to again to ascertain what's genuine and what's not. And it comes down to your little boundary of trust still. One thing which I used to do, but I'm now more comfortable with this, is I'd close windows like this. If I didn't know the website off by heart, I'd then Google it. And I'd say, okay, let's close all the windows, let's start again. Go to the top level, Microsoft.com, and click on updates or things like that. Or for a bank, okay, so my bank was St George as well. If I wasn't aware of the exact address, then at the time I'd Google for that one, Google St George Bank, see what the results were, say, okay, that's the official one there, and then go and view their policy again, what is and what's not. But it's an excellent point there. For the same reason, I do that with emails as well. I have to admit, I actually delete half the email that comes from my mum, which is funny because my dad's over here. And the thing is that, and I do that, and then sometimes I write an email going back saying, did you mean to send this to me? Just in case. I'd rather take that extra time to query and saying, this didn't look like your writing, it didn't look like your style, I wasn't sure if that was you. With an email, that's something I'm definitely sure I can do. With a website like that, by all means Google the correct website, be it Symantec for Norton, we also got McAfee, Trend Micro. Take the time to Google their correct website, click on that website, their homepage, and then look for downloads and updates. By all means, take that extra 30 seconds, 60 seconds if you have to, because otherwise, Chris is absolutely right. A lot of these are getting far too close to being real, and I have more examples in emails from banks a little bit later on. So that's one of the things over here. And for the gentleman, please come back with regards to Mac. So, you can't actually be too careful with Mac there as well, because the industry hasn't really caught up in building the tools for Mac OS X or the iOS 5 that runs on iPads or iPhones. So because there's no real big antivirus or security industry really there for Apple products, they're an easy target right about now. This particular news article over here is describing how there's a fake installer going around for Adobe Flash. Right? Adobe Flash is the Flash player that displays your videos on YouTube and other popular sites that want to show video. Flash is pretty much indispensable on the web. So to see that there's a very accurate looking installer out there specifically written for Mac, and to take advantage of users for Mac who are saying, I've got a Mac, I don't need antivirus, is actually quite dangerous. One of the side effects of this particular one over here is it disables Apple's own inbuilt security there called XProtect there as well, their own utility. Once you click on this particular fake installer for Adobe Flash, and if you try to update Apple's Mac software afterwards, it's disabled, it doesn't work for you anymore. Okay, so it's actually a bit of a nasty one where there's a point of no return. So Mac users also have to be very aware. In fact, Mac users have to be more aware of their own user behavior because they have very few technology lines to fall back on. There just hasn't been that much malware, viruses, trojans for Mac as there has been for Windows. So there's not that much to fall back on. You've just got to be more aware of it for that particular reason. Now, one of the things that, again, goes beyond that, we talked a little bit about antivirus, we talked a bit about system updates and maybe some ways to be sure that you're getting your update from the correct location. I personally am a big fan when it comes to a browser of choice, Mozilla Firefox, for one big reason, and that is this tool over here called NoScript. NoScript is the thing that really tells me what is actually being downloaded into my browser. Right? If you imagine, for instance, going on a first date. Okay, imagine going on a first date. Not that I'm looking at you in particular, but if you were, for instance, to go on a first date, you want to go with just one person in particular, right? Just want to find out what it's like, okay? You wouldn't like it if all of a sudden you turn up and there's 6 of their best mates that have turned up and saying, hi, I'm here as well just to check you out. Unfortunately, it's what a lot of websites do. And NoScript actually lists them all out for you. They'll list out who are the advertisers, such as DoubleClick and AdWords, Google syndication. They're also making connections to your computer, even though you only asked for a connection to, say, SMH. Right. So this is the NoScript window over here on the right-hand side. I'm sitting here going, I didn't ask for these other connections over here. I just wanted to view my article. Right? But if you're in Internet Explorer, you don't have this choice. Google Chrome was designed to be as fast as possible without giving you, the chance to install all these little widgets and gadgets and add-ons and stuff. So this is not available for Google Chrome either. So as a security mechanism, I have to admit it's not necessarily the easiest thing to use. Right? Because at first, if you go to something like smh.com.au and then you click play on one of the videos, it ain't going to play. Okay, so this is one of the things where, because it disables some of the bits and pieces that the website is expecting to run, the SMH, the page back here, is expecting this to be a video. I've blocked the code that makes that a video, so instead it's had to display a picture. So long as I enable allow SMH, because I trust it, hey, then it's going to show the video after that. Make sense? Okay, so again, it's that thing that does take a little bit of getting used to. But it does save you. You look at that and you realise, why is your computer making all those connections? Again, where's your firewalls? There certainly would be allowing all those connections out to the internet without you even knowing. So that's one which I highly recommend. Something else I also highly recommend with regards to browsers is history, your cache. How long do you keep your history in there? How long do you keep the files, all the videos that are downloaded and the pictures that it downloads goes into a cache where it stores it for a couple of weeks, just in case you go back, so it doesn't have to download it again. A cache sounds like a great idea until you look at how much information can be kept there. Okay, who uses eBay online? And who, right up back, yes, me. What's the latest thing you bought on eBay?
I work for business as well.
Okay, cool. Cool. And the last next to you? Okay, you're on eBay that often, it's like, yeah, go all this kind of stuff over here. It's awesome. eBay does something though. It says whenever you want to pay for something, there's a little box at the bottom saying, do you want to remember your information for the next time you come? and if you'd like to purchase it, and then you can streamline this. What's exacerbated this is mobile devices, because a lot of them are touch screens only. You don't want to be sitting there trying to type into a virtual keyboard on the last screen all of your email address and your credit card numbers again, your PayPal information. So it's easy to click yes, please remember me for next time. So when I come back, my transaction is going to be a lot quicker. Buying tickets online, Ticketek, Ticketmaster. If you do that, you know, I go to A-League, Sydney FC matches quite frequently, so I'm on Ticketek quite a fair bit to try and get my tickets on there before going to the match. And each time I click no, please do not remember my information online. Yes. It's important to delete your history. Your cookies is actually a little file that's inside your browser history with your preferences for that website, with your other personal information specific to that computer or that mobile phone for that particular website. And this is one of the root causes of identity theft on the internet. It's taken me a while to get over here, but what I'm about to show you is the case of a certain Bennett Aaron, is his name. He's in the UK, and about 10 odd years ago, he was the victim of fraud, where he tried to buy a house. He and his partner were just having a child for the first time, looking to move up to a house, and then the bank knocked them back because they're saying, I'm sorry, your credit rating is rubbish. You know, it's you've got debts outstanding here. You've obviously been on an internet buying spree because there's all this money over here. And he's like, what happened? Yeah? Here's what happened. He actually made a documentary about it afterwards and started talking about how easy is it really to try and get people's identity. Just give them some.
I'm off to a shopping centre in my Welsh homeland to pose as an official figure. "80% of Welsh people say they're more frightened of ID theft than anything else, even spiders. Can I manipulate this fear to defraud people into giving me their private bank details?" I don't know. I reckon maybe for every 100 people that look, I might get one. I'm going to wear a suit and a tie, and I better get changed.
Do you know about identity fraud? It's the biggest growing crime in the UK. It could be happening to you now. It could be happening to this gentleman at this moment.
Right, there we are then. How was that?
Fantastic. It's got PIN number, last 3 digits, security code. Thank you very much indeed. For the card, for the card number down there. Aren't people really, really trusting?
Do you want all my card number in?
The ones that you want to protect, really. So, I mean, to be fair to them, I'm a genuinely nice guy. Almost everybody who's come over has filled it in. This is a lot easier than I was expecting. No, gosh, no, nobody sees this. These are personal details, so no, it's all, it's all legitimate and above board. All the information you've given me now, I've taken off you fraudulently, that the whole thing is actually a scam to see how many people will actually give a complete stranger their details. You give me all the information that I need now to open an account in your name, and people have been giving me their information all day. I thought we might get 1 or 2. I didn't think that people would be so willing to come over and hand over information. I mean, I generally didn't. Yeah, it's about 20-something. For 2 hours, 20 people. Yeah, that's not bad going. Or really bad going, depending which way you look at it.
Only 2 people out of 20 refused to give me their details. I'm obviously destroying this information, but it has made me wonder, what is being done to protect the public?
Bennett Aaron went and did something spectacular after that, which ultimately got him arrested. And that was, he got a driver's license issued, not in his name. He had his photo on it, but the name was of the UK Home Secretary, Charles Clarke. That is a big offence to obviously steal the identity of a senior minister in the cabinet. He did that and released his whole 45-odd minute documentary on Channel 4 to highlight his plight of how 10 years after the fact he still had not secured a prosecution and will not to this day because the police were too slow to act on the evidence which he'd collected and passed on to the police at that time. So, why identity theft? Why you? There's a couple of big reasons as to why you might be a good target for it. Your credit rating is something that somebody else may not have, right? So to try and secure that off you, it sounds like a pretty good idea, you know, to go on a buying spree afterwards without you actually knowing, and you're left with the debts there afterwards. Another thing that springs to mind is your permanent residency, right? Your status as a citizen or as a permanent resident of this country is probably of interest to other people trying to get into the country as well, and will be sold for some decent coin on the internet. Your identity, somebody else's photo, but your name on a passport. Next time you try travelling to the States, to Thailand, to Europe, and then being denied access at the airport for something that you didn't do. Okay, so where your information goes, where it gets saved, where it gets stored, is actually quite very important because that's where the money is for online criminals. It's very valuable information, and it does and can secure a good amount on the black market. So what can we do about it? A couple of things is obviously how people try to get information out of you in the first place. We've taken a look at a couple of ways previously with, you know, directing you to false websites and saying update this and so on and so forth. But they've been tamed. As the point came up a little bit earlier, banks or emails looking like they come from banks are big examples. These three examples actually do come from St. George's real website, which I was at earlier today. Took a look at these, and these are some examples, which is more common, which is more pertinent because St. George is my bank as well. I'm not telling you my password. Right? So each one of these actually has the real logos. The top one over there is the real colour scheme for their internet banking website as well. The thing is that all three of these are received in your inbox. It's not on a web page. So anytime a financial institution, be it PayPal, an online financial institution, or a bricks and mortar financial institution, says please enter here your secure code, please click here to provide your credentials, so on and so forth, there's obviously going to be a big no. Now this has been around for quite some time. It's called going phishing. That's phishing with PH. Right? So phishing is basically said, I'm going to cast my net vast and wide. I'm going to cast it out there and then see who comes back. Okay. And yes, absolutely, people do return with their passwords, especially if they're the one kind that has one password to rule them all. Okay. So other things to look out for as well, like the point came up a little bit earlier, that is very close to looking like an email address of St. George. Very close indeed. But there's a couple of ways which we can look at that here as well. So this is an example coming up here about PayPal, which I'm going to thresh this out a little bit here as well. The top graphic over here is an inbox, a typical inbox, and it looks like I've got an email rather from PayPal company. One of the steps which I can say that might help you on this stage is to look at the properties for that email. There's a tools menu over there which will have options just for that particular email, and it'll be highlighted then, okay, so what is the actual email address behind it? Because what's the real email address, highlighted in red over here, and what's the email address that actually appears on the front of the email are often two different things. That's the real one as received from your email server, be it Yahoo, be it in your office, so on and so forth. And then over here you get to correlate all that. This is an interesting one over here, Microsoft Outlook Express Center, which is a little free email client which comes with Windows XP. So basically, it's not nothing big like Microsoft Exchange for an official big organisation, or Lotus Domino. They're two big email servers that organisations shell out thousands of dollars for. Instead, that's just a little freebie that somebody's got out of Windows XP and said, I know, I'm going to spam thousands of people and then see if anybody replies. So there are a couple of tools to try and correlate between who really has been sending you this versus what just appears on the cover of the email. Make sense? So it's something that you can do, and you'll often be surprised by the differences between the two. Okay, so that's one example over there. Another example over here, though, is where things get more serious, where it's not just personal identity theft, but I return you back to your position at your office, the place where you work, and then now personal responsibility comes into this. This is a very interesting area where now workplace relations legislation and all sorts of laws have yet to catch up, and you're on a very slippery slope if you happen to get caught on the wrong side of this. A couple of months ago, security giant RSA got compromised because the phishing of cast the net wide and see who responds got narrowed down. Right? It's now called one of two things. It's either called spear phishing, where I'm deliberately aiming for a particular person or a few people within a large organisation. The other term, which I like, is called whaling, where you aim for the big fat cats at the top of the organisation who may not be so tech savvy, but obviously hold the keys to the kingdom. Okay, so you actually try and target these people. This email over here, that's the actual email that got received. Okay, went to only 4 people within RSA, themselves a division of the storage giant EMC. It went to 4 people in their human resources department because the attachment actually said 2011 recruitment over here. So it's targeted towards HR. Somebody said, okay, so on the website for RSA, must be, a little link saying jobs at RSA. Why don't you apply? There's an email address there saying this will get you through like jobs at RSA or careers at RSA.com, something like that. So long as an email address is published that actually narrows things down and somebody can take the time and deliberately craft an attack just for you, so it looks that much more convincing. Okay. So in this particular instance, because they didn't actually take a good look at where the email address came from in the first place, they didn't stop and think, where does that come from? Does that look suspicious in any way? They didn't necessarily look at the options, of that email as well. The one thing that this article doesn't actually tell you is that this email was not in the inbox. The security on that endpoint had actually filtered it through to the junk email. Then the end user was going through their junk email, about to delete it, found this, pulled it out of their junk email, back into the inbox, and then opened that attachment, which itself had the virus and the Trojan in it to get access to their password, which in turn compromised EMC's most secret of algorithms, right, and most secret intellectual property. So whose fault is this? Is this actually a company-wide systemic issue of RSA where they have to write off the loss and say, okay, it was our fault? Or does this poor person's manager now have the right to say, you were misusing company property by going into the junk email, pulling it out, and not being careful, you're fired? That's where the laws have not caught up. And it's something which I'd hate to see you guys on the wrong side of. It's going to take quite some time for companies to try and get adjusted to this scenario because the personal responsibility and liability currently is not in your favour. Right? It's something to be aware of. And again, it's down to user responsibility. The end user can go all they like and say, yes, but the company firewall didn't pick this up, the antivirus did not pick this up. But again, the company can go back to the acceptable user policy, the end user agreements, in your employee contracts, and then say, you went to the junk email, or you weren't careful. This is misuse of company resources. Okay, so this is the kind of thing where your own user behaviour and your own judgment of what do I trust to open ultimately is going to be much more important. One place where you can go to get more information about this, thankfully the Australian Federal Government has helped set up this website called scamwatch.gov.au. Well, they do have lots of information over here on the left-hand side about various scams, either in person or online scams there as well. And you can double check with them and start to see, okay, what kind of things are they seeing? These guys do get information from the feds as well, the Australian Federal Police, and start posting up examples over here of warning signs of what to look out for. But really, they really say it here, that warning sign number 1, you receive an email out of the blue on urgent company-related matter which you were previously unaware of, whether it be a company matter, whether it be a private matter. Right? My junk email, my trash folder of my email is full of urgent, please reply, or you have won this, or there's all sorts of stuff which are in there. So these are things definitely to be aware of with regards to email and that stuff. Okay. So otherwise, other than that, I mean, I've pretty much wrapped up. I've spoken on a number of topics over here. I've pointed out some screenshots where I can. I've given you some tools where I can, some links where I can there as well. What I really want to highlight is that it ultimately does come to a matter of trust, where what websites do you trust, what people do you trust, whether it be emails, Facebook, web pages, manufacturers of antivirus and systems and things like that. Now, these things does add a little bit more time to when you're on the internet. You're going to take that extra 30 seconds, 60 seconds to double check things. Sometimes you'll be deleting emails from friends or family and then going back to them and saying, did you really need to send that to me? But ultimately, it's to keep your computers, your laptops, your iPads virus-free and hopefully minimising your risks, whether it be at the office or from the risk of fraud on the internet. I'm going to leave you that once we get past all these things, there's a lot on the internet to take advantage of. The whole point of all of this is to say that you don't have to rely upon the technology that of the security mechanisms which are currently applied to you. Once you take the security of your computer and your information on yourself, rather than relying upon antivirus or firewalls, there's plenty of good stuff to be had.
Baba yetu yetu liye mbinguni yetu yetu amina. Baba yetu yetu liye jina lako litukuzwe. Baba yetu yetu liye mbinguni yetu yetu amina. Baba yetu yetu liye jina lako litukuzwe. Tupe leo chakula chetu tunachohitaji, utusamehe makosa yetu. Na yule muovu milele. Baba yetu yetu liye mbinguni yetu yetu amina. Baba yetu yetu liye jina lako litukuzwe. Baba yetu yetu liye mbinguni yetu yetu amina. Baba yetu yetu liye jina lako litukuzwe.
heard about this a couple of days ago. I just want to end off this presentation with this dedication to a colleague that we sorely missed here, and someone who provided that extra bit of inspiration to finish this off. She was a big provider of platform, I guess, to my career in the energy and inspiration she provided to myself and the students over here, and her presence will be sorely missed. Otherwise, my thanks to this particular function area, the area of UTS, and the UTS Union that helped fund some of this, and of course University of Technology Sydney. We'd like to have you visit us from time to time. This entire presentation has been filmed and will be on YouTube. The link will be posted at our website, www.ProgSoc.org. Thank you very much for your time tonight. We really appreciate your attention and patience. Thank you very much. Questions? Oh yes, is there any questions? There's no question.
I've got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
How many people here actually have signed up to StarCraft 2? Have you read the terms and conditions? No. Because if you read the terms and conditions, you actually give the right to Microsoft to put live ads in when you're driving down the street or in any of those games. They can put live ads on your computer. Now those live ads are going to be unseen by you and are going to be a potential cause for scammers and Trojans. So, and because if you don't sign that, you don't get to play the game. And if you read the fine print, you'll see that they have the right. In other words, you don't even control what's being put on your computer and don't know about it. And that, I think, is going to be, if I was a scammer, that's what I'd be looking at, putting in Trojans and things through that. So that's something you all might like to think about.
It's a very interesting point there. I probably should have said this during the presentation. Thanks for recording this way after I finished. Earlier this year, when I was Websense actually notified Sydney Morning Herald and the Fairfax Group that some of the advertisements on their webpage were malware. Right? And Sydney Morning Herald goes back and says, well, I just pay Google, or Google pays me rather, to get advertisements on the right-hand side. So Google's own advertising service does not vet whoever pays the money. It says, I want my ads to be in the highest population areas, put them on newspapers and things like that. Google didn't vet them at all. So Sydney Morning Herald was unwittingly actually being a conduit for infection of your computers and your laptops and your iPads and so on and so forth. So that's an excellent point, that the advertising stream is just going to get worse and worse from there. Anybody else after that prophecy of doom? Yes?
A different take on it is the yes men. Because they put up fake websites and scam people into allowing them venues where they make really strong social commentary. Some of it's really disgusting because they lectured to a bunch of university students on McDonald's, except that it wasn't quite McDonald's. And they use that, I mean, it's using it internet insecurity or whatever. For sort of, I don't know, some dubious purposes, but it's worth a look because it's quite funny what they do. Because they're quite outrageous.
I don't know if I trust it now.
Well, they have a website that looks like the World Trade Organization, for instance, and then they get in. Oh, you don't know it? Oh, okay.
Look up the Yes Men.
Look up the Yes Men, and they make social commentary. Like they made a fake announcement that the company that poisoned had a big poison. Bhopal, thank you. Yeah, the wrecked Bhopal. They made a. Sorry.
Union Carbide.
Yeah, thank you. They made an apology on behalf of Union Carbide, except that it wasn't real. And it was run by the BBC, and everyone's there going, oh, this is great. And but it was all fake. But it makes a social statement anyway. So, but it relies on the stuff of security.
Okay, cool. Sorry, you had another comment over this?
Yeah, actually, two questions actually. The first one is with email address. I've noticed that you have like Gmail comes, you have the email from Gmail, and now you have the dots in between, your name's really taken up. I've noticed on Gmail, I have mine without the dot, like first name, last name, won't go. I receive emails from someone that's put the dot in, and it seems like perfect private. Somebody else with my name, which is very common. But then I wonder, well, maybe my emails to go out to some other people and obviously to other people as well if I wouldn't have control of how do you control that, or is it possible at all?
Well, it's an interesting one. I mean, I know many people who've got the dot in there,
And it's easy to leave it in out, so it's hard to like say, obviously you type it out, some people think there's a dot in or not, if you just leave it out on the form or something like that. So if you, send it out, or I send out an email to somebody who thinks there's a dot in, or even if I think there's no dot in, the guy who has the dot in his email address gets the email as well. I wouldn't even know unless this guy says, emails with back and says, I was supposed to do.
Yeah, sometimes it's difficult to, I find impossible necessarily to try and control what you don't send. I've seen my email address being sent by a spammer, and people have sent me emails saying, "Why did you send me this?" And I'm like, "Dude, that wasn't me." What I've noticed is that years ago, when I was still reasonably new to the internet, I signed up to all sorts of newsletters and I subscribed to stuff with a particular email address, and that's the one that's now getting all of the spam, as well as being appropriated by other spammers. The thing with spammers is that some of them move their domains around. So when I showed you there, how to look up the properties of an email, you'll find that properties can change every 2 hours. Sometimes they move every half an hour. And what they do is, with the emails they send, they'll stick your email address on the front of the email, say it looks like it come from you, but the real source, they'll move that around every 2 hours or every half an hour to try and keep masking all that. That's something which I guess you don't really have control over. What I've started noticing, of course, is that a lot of people I know have multiple email addresses. They'll have their super secure one that only family and friends will know. They'll have a more general one where they're happy with an acceptable amount of junk. Then they've got their office ones, which is obviously no chain letters to be forwarded that way. So it ultimately does come to a matter of, I'm going to write this email address off, and this is my real one, and that's my, the one I put on my Facebook profile, so on and so forth. Yeah, so it really comes to that managing the multiple addresses. That's my personal take.
Yeah, that's what it is. I want just that you want maybe for to email on the web because started a little bit. Another question is, you haven't really touched on like Facebook and Google with their like dropping cookies and taking information where you go, actually, how you use the web browser, sites to visit it. Creating this social profile of you, personality profile of you, can be used.
That ultimately comes down to the same comment we had by Chris over here, where you implicitly accept the terms and conditions of whatever Facebook or Google Plus or Twitter indeed wants to do with where you go and whatever information you put into it. And how often you clear your own cache in your browser, how often you clear the history on your own, and your own information over there is one thing. But the other, again, is a matter of trust as to how much you want to put into the public domain or how little you wish to restrict. For the same reason you said, it's not about necessarily other people. It's about the organisations themselves. What does Google as an organisation want with me? What does Facebook as an information want with me? Ultimately, it's your values that can be sold on, your information that can be sold on for a value to somebody else. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes?
Yeah, I'd just make a point you might like to think about. I don't know if you all know, but every mobile phone has a unique code. So if your mobile phone gets stolen and someone uses it, Telstra or Vodafone knows who's using it and where it is. They don't tell you that. One of the things about, you think you've got the list there of all the addresses of the known spots. Why haven't the companies put those into their SIGs? I mean, the question is what we're really doing is we're running against people who are not making any effort to actually do it. We're trying to solve a problem that could be solved by filtering by ISPs, by Telstra's all things, and also by the police by going and getting these websites as soon as they come up. So in other words, the problem that we're trying to do is being obfuscated by large corporates and all the organisations because they're not putting the effort into actually stopping it. And I think that's a question that you need to think about, is why aren't these companies actually putting in some reasonably simple filtering things to stop these addresses going through? They know what they are, and also to basically, as you said, the fellow there took the police 2 weeks or something to go and chase when they know what it is. Telstra could actually get every mobile phone. They could say to the police, right, that phone's been stolen. We triangulate it with the towers, that's where they are, go and pick them up. So one of the things is the corporates are actually not doing anything to prevent this, they're actually allowing it And they're not making any effort at all to do it. But I think that's a very interesting perspective, that a lot of these problems, there'll still be some, obviously, because people are going to get smarter all the time. The other thing I'd like to point about, you're saying about social networking, is yes, it looks like the big thing now. 30 years, I asked my students in a class, how many of them, one of their points was made at New Scientist was that young people have all their information on Facebook, all their photos, all their contacts, everything like that. They don't have any copy of them. I said to my class of 90 students, when you're 50 years old, how many of you think Facebook will still be alive and you can get this information? Not one student put their hand up. So this may only be transit, it might be 10, 15, 20 years, but something better will come along. And I might suggest to you that if you have a lot of stuff on Facebook that is valuable to you, photos of things, that you might want to make sure you store it offline rather than leaving it there, because it may not be available in 20 or 30 years' time, and it's quite good to go back and remember all those things which you forgot.
It's to the latter point over there. What makes social networking a bit easier from that perspective is things like upload your photos directly from your mobile to Facebook or upload directly to Twitter. And that way, there's more of an emphasis on you have that instant satisfaction of, look, there I am over here at this precise moment.
But you may not have it in 5 years to 10 years' time.
One, you won't have that in time, and two, it takes longer to get a little dongle out and connect your phone to your laptop and download the photos, or do the whole Bluetooth thing with phone to your laptop as well. It takes longer. Facebook is that instant gratification of it's there. I've got some sort of record. It's off my phone. So they make it easy. And again, it goes back to convenience and security. Nobody ever said the two were on the same side.
It's an inverse relationship.
Yeah, it's like, which one do you want? The other one, though, is one which I deliberately didn't really bring up, which is around corporates spending money. Certainly when I was at Cisco, the thing about selling stuff over there, what do companies want to spend their money on, what IT companies want to spend their budgets on, IT departments I should say, they can see that buying fancy new phones will save them money, or fancy new voicemail systems. They can see that video conferencing systems can save on air travel and accommodation and things like that. There continues to be significant debate, and it's very difficult for an organisation to try and say, how is this new security system of filtering software saving my organisation money? Which is ultimately what bean counters, the finance department, the chief financial officer is often telling the chief information officer, your security system sounds great, we can't afford it. Now, I need to make economies elsewhere. Far too often that's been the answer to a lot of my queries with sales teams at Websense, Cisco and so on. That's the only commentary I'm going to make on it because the rest has been recorded. But it's just a trend which I've seen. And that's why I wanted to highlight what are the individual behaviours we can take, because your company that you work for isn't necessarily going to cover your backside. The end user agreements that you're bound to as an employee are deliberately left vague so that there's a back door that the companies can take saying, hey, it's not your fault. Which is why it comes back to what can each one of you as an individual do to counter that in your own behaviour at home and at the office. Anything else? Hope you all enjoyed tonight, or at least you all stayed over.